Good morning, children. This is a continuation of the previous day's summary. This is the summary continued, okay? I'm continuing with the same summary. This is the continuation, so don't be confused. This is also the next part of the summary, okay? So, by late afternoon, they reached a small town, Hor. Name of the town is Hor, back on the main east-west highway that followed the old trade route from Lhasa to Kashmir. These are names of places. Daniel took a ride in a truck and went to Lhasa. Satan and the narrator bade him farewell. Hor was a gloomy place covered with dust and rocks and devoid of vegetation. It was scattered with a lot of refuse that had gathered over the years. It was regrettable as this town was on the shore of Lake Mansarovar, Tibet's most honored lake, very famous lake of Tibet. Ancient Hindu and Buddhist study of the universe pinpoints Mansarovar as the source of four great Indian rivers: the Indus, the Ganges, the Satluj, and the Brahmaputra. Okay, so children, what? So these places actually looks very beautiful, where the four rivers meet and all these things. Only the Satluj flows from this lake, but the headwaters of the others all rise nearby on the sides of Mount Kailash. They had teen horse-only cafe, which, like all the other buildings in town, was built from badly painted concrete and had 3 broken windows, but they had a good view of the lake through one of the windows. After half an hour's stop, they drove westwards out of the town towards Mount Kailash. The narrator was surprised to see Hor because it was absolutely different from what he had read about it. Ikai Kawaguchi, a Japanese monk who had been there in 1900, was so stirred by the holiness of the lake that he burst into tears. A few years later, the place had a similar effect on Sven Hedin, a sweet visitor, that means from Sweden, okay? They reached a guest house in Darchen after 10:30 p.m. They were 4760 meters above the sea level at a great height. It was disturbed night. The narrator had terrible cold because of the open air rubbish dump in Hor. With his nostrils blocked, he found it difficult to breathe. He was tired and hungry and thus started breathing through his mouth. But barely had he slept when he woke up abruptly. That means he did not get a good sleep. He felt a peculiar heaviness in his chest. He sat up and cleared his nasal passages. He felt relieved, but the moment he lay down, he intuitively felt that something was wrong. That means he was not really well. He was not breathless, but simply could not sleep. The fear of dying in his sleep kept him awake. The next morning, Satan took him to the building. So he took him to that building, and that looked like a monastery from the outside. It had a very solid door that opened into a large courtyard. In the consulting room, there was a Tibetan doctor who did not have the equipment that a doctor would have, clad in a thick pullover and a woolly hat. He listened to the narrator's symptoms and said it was because of the altitude and cold. Yes, the great height, what happens when the height is too much, you are at a high altitude, you face those breathing problems are likely to happen. Why? Because as you go higher and higher up, the oxygen keeps decreasing. That is the reason for breathing problems. He assured the narrator that he would be fine and gave him a brown envelope stuffed with 15 screws of paper that contained brown powder that tasted like cinnamon. Cinnamon in Hindi it is dalchini. What is it in Kannada? I don't know. He was asked to take them with hot water. The narrator did not like the look of the contents but took them anyway. He slept soundly. That means he had a good sleep. When Satan was assured that the narrator was going to be well, he left him and returned to Lhasa. As a Buddhist, it didn't really matter. The narrator died, but he thought it would be bad for business. So after the narrator got his rest and a good night's sleep, Darchen didn't look so awful. It was still dusty and had heaps of rubble and refuse all the dirt and the dust. But the bright sun gave him a view of the Himalayas. He saw the snow-capped mountain Gurla Mandhata with a small cloud hanging over its peak. The town had a few general stores selling Chinese cigarettes, soap and other basic provisions, as well as the usual strings of prayer flags. In front of one, men collected in the afternoon for a game of pool on a strange table in the open air, while they collected there while nearby women washed their long hair in the icy water of narrow brook near the guest house. Now, if you were there, you would have started shivering. I don't know what would have happened. Dachin felt stress-free and slow, but for the narrator, this was a major disadvantage. There were no pilgrims. He had been told that in the peak of pilgrimage season, the town was full of what? Visitors. That was a reason for his being there in the beginning of the season. But it seemed that it was too early. One afternoon he sat with a glass of tea in Dachin's only cafe, thinking about the paucity of pilgrims, why they are not coming there, and the fact that he hadn't made much progress with his self-help program on positive thinking. After some contemplation means after thinking a lot, he felt he could only wait. He did not like the idea of going alone on a pilgrimage. The Kora was seasonal. That pilgrimage is the Kora because parts of the road were likely to be blocked by snow. At that time, you cannot go for Kora. He had no idea if the snow had cleared, but he saw the large pieces of dirty ice on the banks of Dachin stream. From the time when Satan had left, he had not met anyone in Dachin who could answer even the basic questions in English till he met Norbu. The narrator was in a small dark cafe with a long metal stove that ran down the middle. The walls and roofs were covered with multicolored sheets of plastic that is made into shopping bags in many countries. Plastic is one of China's most successful exports along the Silk Road today. So, what is exported? It is known for its export of plastics. He sat beside a window so that he could see the pages of his notebook. He also had a novel with him. Norbu saw the book, came to him, sat opposite and asked the narrator if he was English. They started a conversation. They started talking. The narrator could make out that he did not belong to that place as he was wearing a wind cheater and metal-rimmed spectacles of Western style. He told the narrator that he was a Tibetan but worked in Beijing at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences in the Institute of Ethnic Literature. He too had come to do the Kora. Kora is the pilgrimage. Norbu had been writing academic papers about the Kailash Kora and its importance in various works of Buddhist literature for many years, but he had never actually done it himself. When the narrator told him what brought him to Dachin, he was excited and wanted to work with him as a team. He soon realized that Norbu was ill-equipped for the pilgrimage, that means not well prepared, so he kept telling the narrator how fat he was and how tough it was going to be for him to walk and all that. He wasn't really a practicing Buddhist, but it became known that he had enthusiasm and that he was a Tibetan. Although at first the narrator had thought that he would make the trek in the company of religious people, but then felt that Norbu would turn out to be the ideal companion. Norbu suggested that they hire some yaks. Yaks are animal, wild buffaloes, to carry the luggage. As he said, it was not possible for him to prostrate himself all around the mountain, as it was not his style, and anyway his tummy was too big. Children, see, look at the beautiful picture of Kailash Manasarovar. So beautiful. Yes, we all feel like going there. Oh my God, look at the blue waters of the Sarovar. Lovely it is. beautiful place of pilgrimage. No wonder it is a place of pilgrimage, because it will give you absolute peace. It will make you calm and composed and self-satisfied. Don't you think, children, it's a beautiful place? No wonder so many pilgrims visit that place every year.